On a crisp spring morning, Buckingham Palace stood bathed in soft golden light, the changing of the guard drawing the usual crowd of eager tourists. Among the sea of cameras and curious faces stood Lance Corporal Jonathan Reeves, a veteran of Her Majesty's Coldstream Guards. His posture was flawless, his bearskin cap towering above the heads of onlookers, and his rifle held with ceremonial precision. To the untrained eye, Jonathan was just another immovable figure in red and black, but those who knew the tradition understood he was so much more. Jonathan had served in Afghanistan before earning the honor of guarding the royal residence. Beneath the stillness of his stance lay years of discipline, sacrifice, and loyalty to a lineage stretching back over 350 years. His role wasn't merely symbolic, it was a living embodiment of duty and resilience. As the square filled with murmurs and the distant beat of drums, another figure emerged from the crowd. Tyler Morgan, an American social media personality known for his outlandish pranks and viral stunts. Tyler, wearing his signature King of Content hoodie, had one goal: to capture a video that would outshine his last million-view post. But little did he know, he was about to clash with a tradition that had withstood empires. And so, the stage was quietly set for a confrontation that would not only test Jonathan's resolve, but also deliver a powerful lesson to millions watching around the world. If you love stories where honor triumphs over disrespect, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and join our community, because this is just the beginning of Jonathan's incredible stand at Buckingham Palace. The hum of anticipation hung in the air as the crowd shuffled for a better view of the guards. Children perched on their parents' shoulders, and tourists lifted phones skyward, all eager to capture a piece of British tradition. Amid them, Tyler Morgan stood out not because of his size, but because of his intent. Clad in his garish hoodie, emblazoned with King of Content, Tyler adjusted his phone for a live broadcast, grinning as comments flooded in. "Watch this, folks," he whispered into his mic. About to make history, his followers, thousands watching in real time, egged him on with laughing emojis and cries for him to do something epic. And so, with an exaggerated stretch, Tyler stepped forward, breaking the invisible but well-understood barrier between spectator and soldier. Jonathan Reeves, still as a statue, registered the movement with his peripheral vision but made no sign. The code of the Queen's Guard dictated stoic composure unless direct physical threat was detected. Tyler, emboldened by the silence, moved closer. First, it was mocking salutes and exaggerated bows. He danced around Jonathan, pulling faces for the camera and narrating his every move with snide humor. "Look at this guy. Unfazed. Unbothered. Is he even real, folks?" The crowd's initial chuckles turned uneasy as Tyler's antics grew bolder. He leaned in, pretending to whisper into Jonathan's ear. "Hey mate, blink if you're alive still." Jonathan held firm, eyes forward, spine straight, grip unyielding on his rifle. But Tyler wasn't done. He produced a paper coffee cup, its lid precariously balanced, and waved it in front of Jonathan's face. "But even a royal guard flinches at this," he jeered, tilting the cup just enough to let a drop fall dangerously close to the polished black boots below. The mood shifted. Murmurs rippled through the onlookers, and gasped. Others pulled out their phones, sensing the moment teetering on the edge of chaos. A veteran standing near the front bristled, his fists clenching as he muttered, "That's enough, lad." But Tyler, caught in the adrenaline of live fame, pushed further. He faked a throw, jerking the cup towards Jonathan's face. For the briefest second, tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. A collective inhale swept the square. Jonathan's eyes, cool and sharp, flickered not in fear, but in readiness. The line had been crossed. In that instant, the Queen's Guard shifted with a precision honed through years of military discipline. Jonathan's hand moved. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting, no wild gesture, but the swiftness with which he intercepted the falling coffee cup mid-air was breathtaking. The paper cup, caught just inches before it could spill, hung suspended in his grasp like a symbol of defiance. The crowd froze. Phones captured every second. Silence fell heavy over Buckingham Palace, broken only by the faint distant sound of the marching band. Tyler's face drained of its smug grin, replaced by dawning horror as he realized his prank had just become something else entirely, a challenge met and answered with flawless control. Jonathan's stance, though unchanged in form, now radiated an unmistakable authority. His stillness was no longer passive but commanding. He had not only protected his uniform, but the centuries of tradition it represented, and as the weight of the moment settled, Every person present felt it this wasn't just a prank gone wrong. It was the collision between shallow fame and enduring honor. As the last ripple of shock passed through the square, Jonathan Reeves remained motionless save for the coffee cup now gripped firmly in his gloved hand. Tyler Morgan, for the first time, faltered. His live stream continued, but the comments had shifted from laughing faces to wide-eyed emojis and blunt warnings. "You've gone too far, mate." Jonathan's gaze, steady as steel, finally shifted. He took a measured step forward, just one, and yet the sound of his boot striking the ancient stones echoed across Buckingham Palace's forecourt like a cannon shot. The entire crowd seemed to lean in, breath held, phones raised, and then, in a voice as calm as a still lake but sharp enough to cut glass, Jonathan spoke. "In over 300 years of guarding this palace," he began, his tone even but edged with an unmistakable authority, "we have withstood war, revolution, and provocation far greater than this." His words carried without effort, reaching every ear in the square. Tyler blinked, caught between his crumbling bravado and the realization that his prank had summoned something ancient and immovable. "You," Jonathan continued, now raising the captured cup for all to see, "thought this flimsy vessel of paper and arrogance might succeed where armies have failed." His eyes narrowed slightly. "It will not." The silence deepened. Even the wind seemed to still, as though Buckingham itself was listening. The crowd, once amused, now stood rooted. Their smiles faded into solemnity. Jonathan's next words landed like hammer blows. "This uniform," he said, glancing down briefly at the crimson coat and gleaming buttons, "is not a costume for your amusement. It is the symbol of sacrifice, of men who have fallen defending what you mock today." Tyler swallowed hard. His phone, still recording, trembled slightly in his grasp. His live audience watched in growing horror as the prankster's smug persona cracked before the world's gaze. "This," Jonathan's voice grew firmer, "is not simply cloth and thread. It is duty. It is honor. It is respect, concepts that, clearly, you struggle to comprehend." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. A veteran near the front, who earlier clenched his fists, now nodded with grim satisfaction. Someone else started to clap, but quickly stopped, sensing that Jonathan was far from finished. With a small, deliberate motion, Jonathan rotated the coffee cup in his hand, his every movement precise, almost ritualistic. His eyes flicked to the label. "Tyler Morgan," he read aloud, the name hanging in the air like an indictment. "Complete with your social media handles." "How convenient." Tyler's face blanched. The bravado evaporated as he realized that his identity, once proudly broadcast, had now become an anchor pulling him under the Metropolitan Police. Jonathan continued, his voice steady as granite. "Take a dim view of assault on a member of the Royal Guard." He gestured subtly towards the crowd, dozens, perhaps hundreds, of phones recording every second. "I suspect they will find this evidence compelling." A woman's voice rang out from the throne, clear and firm. "I've already sent my video to the police." Others nodded in agreement, thumbs working quickly, uploading every angle of Tyler's humiliation to every platform. Jonathan took one final step forward, standing now directly before Tyler, whose phone drooped at his side. His next words fell like the closing of a heavy iron gate. "You sought attention, Mr. Morgan. Congratulations. You have it." His gaze, cold and unflinching, bored into Tyler's, along with a formal charge of attempted assault. "I trust this is the kind of viral content you dreamed of." Tyler's mouth opened, but no words came. Around him, the square remained frozen, save for the continuous blinking of red recording lights. His followers, once his cheering mob, had become silent witnesses to his public undoing. And Jonathan Reeves, without raising his voice or lifting his weapon, had delivered a lesson that would echo far beyond the gates of Buckingham Palace. As Jonathan Reeves resumed his rigid stance, returning the coffee cup to his belt with flawless precision, a wave of applause erupted. It started small, a single clap from the veteran near the front, but within seconds, it grew into a thunderous ovation that rolled across the square, like a storm breaking over Buckingham Palace. The security officer, who had stood by in silent approval, finally stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Tyler Morgan's shoulder. "Sir, you will need to come with me," he said, his voice clipped and professional, but with an unmistakable undertone. "Your game is over." Tyler's face, once glowing with self-satisfaction, had drained of all color. His phone, still clutched in his hand, still streaming, captured every humiliating second. The comments now came in thick and fast. "Bro, you messed up big time. This is beyond cringe. This is criminal. Congratulations. You played yourself. As he was led away. Tyler's protests were weak and brittle. It was just a prank. I have millions of views. I didn't mean. But no one was listening. The crowd, who had earlier chuckled at his antics, now watched with stern faces. Some shook their heads in disapproval. Others deleted their earlier videos, embarrassed to have cheered him on. A group of teenagers, who had been live-streaming the whole event, quickly ended their broadcasts. One of them muttered, "That was proper respect, that was. Did you see how the guard caught that cup? Like a superhero." "No," an elderly woman corrected sharply, her voice cutting through the chatter. "A superhero would have shown off. This is real service. Power under control." Near the front, the veteran who had tried to intervene earlier stepped forward again. He removed his service cap and held it over his heart. 30 years in uniform, he called out, his voice thick with emotion. "And I've never seen anything finer." Other veterans in the crowd followed suit, creating a ripple of silent salutes. Children who had earlier hidden behind their parents now stepped forward, trying to mimic Jonathan's perfect, still posture. One little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mom, when I grow up, I want to be just like him." The mother, her eyes glistening, smiled. "Then you'll need to learn what real strength looks like, love. It's not about pranks and followers. It's about dignity, just like that gentleman showed us today." Even as Tyler was escorted towards the waiting police car, the mood in the square had transformed entirely. The tourists no longer treated Jonathan like a prop for their vacation photos. They kept a respectful distance, snapping pictures with quiet admiration. Some even bowed their heads slightly before their cameras clicked, acknowledging the weight of the tradition he embodied. The security officer held up the recovered coffee cup. "We'll need this for evidence," he said, carefully backing it, "along with the 200 videos we've already received." A woman in the crowd called out, "I've got it all in the 1,000. Officers from the very start." Others chimed in, eager to help build an airtight case against Tyler. Meanwhile, the 2 uniformed Metropolitan Police officers who had arrived took statements from witnesses. The veteran gave his account, crisp and clear. That coffee was aimed at the guard's face. "In my military experience, that constitutes a direct assault." Tyler, now visibly trembling, overheard snippets, mentions of fines, reports to the American embassy, and even a possible UK travel ban. His live stream was still active, but now the comments tore him apart. "This is going to be on your record forever, my guy. Internet never forgets. You're done. As the police began to lead him away, Tyler turned, voice cracking. "Can't we just delete the videos?" One officer glanced at him, eyebrows raised. "The internet never forgets, mate. Especially not this." And as the crowd parted for Tyler's miserable walk of shame, all eyes turned back to Jonathan Reeves, still standing motionless. Posture perfect, dignity intact. He had become, in that moment, something greater than a ceremonial guard. He was a living symbol of everything Tyler had failed to understand: honor, tradition, and unwavering duty. By sunset that very day, the footage had spread like wildfire. Across Britain and America, televisions blared headlines. "Buckingham Palace Guard shows perfect restraint against social media prankster." "Honor over hooliganism. Royal Guard's response goes viral." The coffee catch heard around the world. Clips of Jonathan Reeves' now iconic catch, the swift, controlled movement that snatched the cup mid-air, were edited into countless slow-motion reels. Commentators on BBC and CNN replayed the footage, dissecting every detail. A retired Royal Guard commander appeared on BBC News that evening. "What you witnessed," he explained, "was not luck. It was years of relentless training, crystallized into a single moment. That catch wasn't just about stopping a cup of coffee. It was about preserving the dignity of a tradition centuries old." Social media platforms lit up like never before. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag Royal Guard Respect. Hashtag Tradition Triumphs. Hashtag Discipline Over Disrespect. Memes flooded in, but for once, they celebrated honor, not mockery. One popular image showed Jonathan mid-catch with the caption, "When disrespect meets discipline, real power looks like this." Meanwhile, Tyler Morgan's fall was just as swift and brutal as his rise had been. His once booming accounts hemorrhaged followers by the millions. Sponsors who had lined up to cash in on his viral pranks now fled in droves. The apology video he hastily posted only made things worse. His nervous stammering, blaming others, and insisting it was just a prank only fueled more outrage. "Actions have consequences," one veteran wrote in the comments. "And today, you learned that in front of the whole world, the British courts moved quickly. Tyler was slapped with a hefty fine, and far more damaging for an influencer whose brand depended on globetrotting, a permanent travel ban from the UK. News outlets speculated about further charges and lawsuits. His reputation, once built on daring stunts, lay in ruins. Meanwhile, back at Buckingham Palace, Jonathan Reeves received a private commendation ceremony. Senior military officials and palace representatives gathered to honor his composure and skill. True to his character, Jonathan kept his remarks humble. "I simply did my duty," he said softly, "as every guard before me has done, and every guard after me will continue to do." But his actions spoke louder than words. The very coffee cup he caught, now carefully preserved, was placed on display at the Royal Military Academy, where it became an instant symbol. A small plaque read, "Tradition upheld, dignity defended, 2025. Tourists at Buckingham Palace began whispering about the coffee cup incident, turning it into a modern legend. Parents taught their children to stand straight and show respect, pointing to Jonathan's example. Veterans felt a renewed pride, seeing one of their own embody the very best of service. Even months later, schools, leadership seminars, and military academies around the world showed clips of Jonathan's restraint as a case study in discipline and poise under pressure. The man who had stood silent while chaos swirled around him had, without raising his voice, taught millions a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. And so, while Tyler Morgan faded into infamy, Jonathan Reeves stood tall not just as a soldier, but as a timeless symbol that in an age of viral noise, tradition and dignity still have the final word. In the months that followed, the coffee cup incident became more than just a viral clip. It grew into a modern parable, passed quietly from parent to child, from veteran to civilian. Tourists continued to flock to Buckingham Palace, but now they approached with a different air. Where once they might have treated the guards as photo props, now they stood back, phones lowered, gazes respectful. Children stood straighter, mimicking the posture of the guards they had seen in the famous video. Parents whispered to them, "That's what real strength looks like, not loud, not flashy, but calm, controlled, and unshakable." Tour guides adapted their speeches, weaving in the story of Jonathan Reeves. "This is not just ceremony," they told wide-eyed visitors. "These guards represent centuries of sacrifice and discipline." And recently, one card reminded the world why they deserve our respect. The coffee cup, now displayed at the Royal Military Academy, drew steady crowds. Veterans made pilgrimages to see it, thumb saluting the small, battered cup behind glass as if greeting an old comrade. It became more than an object, it was a symbol, a quiet testament to dignity standing firm against mockery. Meanwhile, Jonathan Reeves continued his service at the palace gates, unchanged in routine but elevated in the public eye. To the tourists, he had become a living emblem of tradition done right, power under perfect control. British and American news outlets revisited the story on anniversaries, calling it the day tradition triumphed over disrespect. Leadership seminars from London to New York used it as a case study in restraint, discipline, and the enduring strength of heritage in a world obsessed with fleeting fame. Even social media, often the engine of chaos, had to pause and reflect. Memes once meant for laughs turned into tributes, and hashtags like #RealRespect and #DisciplineWins saw continued use. And so, while Tyler Morgan faded into obscurity, remembered only as a cautionary tale, Jonathan Reeves' quiet stand continued to echo not just through Buckingham Palace, but through every lesson taught about respect, duty, and what it truly means to wear a uniform. A moment had passed. A legacy was born. In the weeks that followed, the coffee cup incident became more than a viral video. It became a story people shared with a sense of pride and quiet reflection. Tourists visiting Buckingham Palace now approached with a little more reverence. Where before they might have laughed or posed too close, now they stood back, heads slightly bowed, showing the kind of respect that Jonathan Reeves had so powerfully reminded them of. Parents pointed to the guards and told their children, "That's what real strength looks like, calm, controlled, and unwavering." Tour guides wove Jonathan's name into their stories, calling him the man who showed the world that dignity never goes out of style. The simple coffee cup he caught now sat behind glass at the Royal Military Academy, drawing visitors who saw it not as trash, but as a simple proof that tradition, discipline, and honor can still command attention in a world obsessed with fleeting fame. Meanwhile, Jonathan carried on his duty, silent and steadfast, but to many, he had become a living example of what it truly means to wear the uniform with pride. Across the UK and even in the US, his story was retold in classrooms, leadership workshops, and military circles, a modern reminder that real power lies in self-control and respect. And as Tyler Morgan faded into internet infamy, Jonathan's quiet stand became a lasting legacy. If this story of tradition triumphing over disrespect moved you, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss our next tale of honor, courage, and timeless values. Share this with someone who believes that true strength is found in dignity. New inspiring stories every week right here.